Hello students, welcome back into the another session of CS22 operating system concepts using Linux and Unix. We are about to finish the practical session of CS22, that is operating system concept using Linux and Unix. The last we are discussing about unit number 7, that is shell programming. Various concept of shell programming we have discussed, like shell keywords, shell variables, shell system variables, then various shell programming, basic shell programming using if else, execution of test command, various shell operators like and or not operator, pipeline operator, etc. Then in last lecture we have discussed about looping control structure called for, while and until, and we have written a very basic and few example using the same. Now we are going to discuss about the last part of unit number 7, that is break and continue command. As you can see that these are the part of looping control statements in unit number 7. So break and continue is similar like break and continue, which we have already learned into the programming in C as well as into the C++. So even in Linux it provides the same functionality of break and continue over here. Break statement is used to break the flow of program in between the execution of looping control structure till the condition is true, or even the condition is true, break statement exit the flow and displays the output onto the screen. Again I am repeating my words. Break is a such type of statement available into the general programming language which discontinue the flow of looping control structure if condition is true also. Then as you can see onto the screen, there is a one program which displays 0 to 10 number. In between that it checks whenever the value of a particular variable becomes 5, then it breaks the statement and it prints the output onto the screen of that variable by adding one more value. That means the output of this entire program will be 6 onto the screen. Let's see how can we design this particular program. Here you can see that a is equals to 0, that means the initialization of one variable with fixed value called 0. Then it checks whether the value of this a is less than 10 or not. So 0 is less than 10, so this condition is true, this do statement executes, 0 is going to be printed onto the screen. Then there is a one more decision making statement which checks that whether this variable value contains the 5 or not. For 0 this condition becomes false, then it repeats, that means it will add one more value into the a becomes 2. Again this entire repetition done for the second time. For 2 it is less than 10, it prints 2 onto the screen. It checks that whether this a is 5 or not, condition becomes false, then again it add one more value, a becomes 3. For 3 even this value becomes false, then it becomes 4. For value called 4 even this if becomes false. Then after a becomes 5. For 5 this decision making statement becomes true, then it breaks the statement. That means it prints 1 2 3 4 5 as the condition is about to repeat from 0 to 10 times. This is the use of break statement. Again I am repeating my words. In this program what happens, condition repeats from 0 to 10 times. On every repetition it checks that what is the value of a. Whenever the value of a becomes 5, it breaks the statement as the parent condition is true also then. So that is the use of break statement. What will be the definition of this particular shell script. Write a shell script to demonstrate the use of break statement. Again I am repeating my words. Write a shell script to demonstrate the use of break statement. I hope all of you have written this particular definition. Otherwise just pause the video and note down this particular definition and then write down this particular shell script by pausing the video. I am not wasting the time. This particular program repeats 1 to 5 times only. Once the 5 is onto the screen, automatically the flow breaks by this particular program as the condition is true also, because A is going to repeat from 0 to 10 times, but as the 5 comes into the repetition, automatically that this particular statement becomes break. So this is the use of break statement. Same like this. In this particular program, you can use continue, just replace this break statement with continue. What happens? Whenever the value of A becomes 5, it will not break the flow, it continues till the execution of A from 0 to 10 time. So break and continue is totally reverse than each other. Break statement exits the program in between the condition whether it is true also, while continue statement continues the program till the condition is true. So this is the difference between break and continue. So this was all about the very basic things about break and continue. We have already written the arithmetic shell script and perform various shell script examples in previous lecture. Just revise all the lectures that I have already uploaded over the our official YouTube channel, so you becomes clear for all the concept of unit number 7 called shell programming. Without wasting more time, we are going to start about the discussion of unit number 8, that is getting started with Linux. In this entire chapter, the main core part of this entire chapter is the installation and configuration of Ubuntu, which we have already done in our previous lecture. Again I am repeating my words. The core part of this unit number 8, which is getting started with Linux, is the installation and configuration of Linux. ના નેટ નેટ છે ને તમારે એ અહીંયાથી ચાલુ થશે ને કાં તમારે પાવર હાઉસમાંથી ચાલુ કરવું પડશે. હા તો અહીંયા ઉપરથી વાયર કપાઈ ગયા નથી જોયું. સરની ઓફિસમાં કંઈ નથી કરવાનું. Sorry for the interruption. Unit number 8 is getting started with Linux. The main core part of this entire chapter is the installation and configuration of Linux, which we have already done into the previous lecture, but still we'll repeat all these steps in this particular chapter, and I will show you how can we install Ubuntu in our system using VirtualBox. Even it contains some historical part of Linux, the difference between GNU and GPL, open source and freeware difference, structure of Linux, and how can we start and shut down the Linux. All this topic we have to discuss in this particular unit called unit number 8, getting started with Linux. So let's see. History of Linux is very simple. Linux is the first truly free Unix-like operating system. The underlying GNU project was launched in the year 1983 by Richard Stallman. This entire project is originally to develop an Unix compatible operating system called GNU, intended to be the entirely free software. Many programs and utilities were contributed by the developer around the world in the year 1991. During the period of 1983 and 1991, many researches has been taken place for Unix-like operating system. The final and the first copy of Linux were introduced into the 1991 by introducing the missing major component of Linux, which is called as kernel. So we can say that the history of Linux is very simple. Linux were started officially over the public domain in the year 1991, but the research for the same has been started from 1983 by the person called Richard Stallman. During the period of its research and design and development, many components, individual components, has been founded by the team of this person and introduced into the market for the general purpose. But by replacing the major component called kernel, in the year 1991, the first official copy of Linux is produced for the public domain. In a team of Richard Stallman, one more person who performs his role as a key person called Linus Torvald, he has founded the first copy of Linux-like operating system in the year 1991, who is actually the student of Helsinki University of Finland. He has started developing the device drivers and hardware access in the middle of 1991, and the first version he has introduced for the same is 0.01. This is the person called Linus Torvald. As the prefix of his name, Linux operating system has been founded by the lots of efforts which has been taken by this particular guy called Linus Torvald. Linux is famous for its features like Linux provides multi-user capability, Linux is multitasking, Linux is portable, Linux is more secure than the environment of Windows. Linux provide the execution of operating system without installing into the local machine. That means by using the live CD and USB, you can also access the resources of Linux. Linux have better graphical user interface. It supports customized keyboard, It provides various application support. It have a very unique file system, and last, it is free of cost. From internet and from the official website of Linux, free of cost and without purchasing any license, you can use this operating system. So these are the basic features of Linux operating system. In examination, they can ask a question like this: write down the Linux features. So as you can see onto the screen, just note down all the features for the future reference which we have to mention during the examination. I'm just repeating the name: multi-user, multitasking, portability, security, live CD USB support, graphical user interface. It supports customized keyboard, application support, file system, and open source. These are the features of Linux. Many of us have a confusion in our mind: what is the difference between Linux and Unix? So over here, first I would like to clear the doubts related to Linux and Unix. Then we can go ahead for the further discussion. Various differences are there, even it can be asked into the examination. The first difference is Linux is an open source operating system which is freely available for everyone. Second, it has many flavors like Ubuntu, Red Hat, Fedora, Puppy Linux, Kali Linux, etc. Nowadays, Linux is in great demand as it provides the better security than the Windows operating system, majorly into the corporate area. As a server, they prefer to install Linux into the main computer. Linux is used everywhere from the server, smartphone, tablet, mainframe, and into the supercomputers. Linux is freely distributed, downloaded, and distributed to magazines also, and the price of the same is very cheaper than the Windows. These are the few points which is related with Unix. It is an operating system which can only be purchased from the specific companies like IBM, HP, Sun Solaris, etc. etc. It was mainly developed for the server, workstation, and mainframe. The fundamental usage of Linux operating system is to use into the server, workstation, and PCs. Unix is a copyrighted product, so we need to purchase a valid license from the company like IBM, HP, Sun Solaris. Nowadays, many other companies have also developed their own operating system on Unix operating system. If you are interested in that particular product, we have to purchase the license, but Linux is free of cost, like Ubuntu that we are using. The next concept is GNU and GPT concept. The full form of GNU is General Public License. GNU is widely used as a free software license which guarantees end users the freedom for running and modifying the softwares. The license was originally written by the owner of Linux operating system, that is Richard Stallman and Linus Torvald, for providing the full access to end user for its operating system. GPL is a copyleft license, which means that Derivative work can only be distributed under the same license terms. This is a distinction to permissive free software licenses, of which BSD and MIT license are widely used for general distribution of the operating system, and mainly all these licenses are used in Linux. So one more bifurcation is there. GNU is used for the Linux and GPL is used for the Unix like operating system. Now there is another difference that we have to keep into the consideration is the difference between open source and free source. Open source is a source which can be accessed from anywhere by any of the user, that is called as open source. The application softwares that we are using like XAMPP, C, all these are the open sources, and free sources means which you can download for your general purpose and you can install into the system, that is called as free source. This is the general structure of Linux, where system softwares are there, user processes are there, user utilities and compilers are there, which all makes the communication between the kernel and all these components through system libraries. That kernel have kernel modules which interact with various hardwares like CPU, RAM and input-output devices. Now the main part of this entire chapter is the installation and configuration of Linux. Just download the official version of Linux like operating system which you want to install. We have downloaded Ubuntu 16.04 from the internet. Just put it into the pen drive or the sources from which you want to install. Just insert that particular pen drive over the USB port and start your computer. The first screen which you will see is the welcome screen, where you have to select the language of operating system which you want to install. By default, obviously we are selecting English. Then if your downloaded Ubuntu file is updated, then it will not ask this particular window, otherwise it will ask to accept these two check boxes. Just press continue over here by selecting these two check boxes, that is upload updates while installing the Ubuntu and install third-party software of graphics and Wi-Fi hardware. Then the next is installation type. This computer currently has no detected operating system. Would you like to do erase the disk and install the Ubuntu? Select this particular option and press install now. Then wait for some moment, near about 10 to 15 minutes maximum. During this it will ask for some other confirmations for VGA adapters and so on. Just press continue over here. At the end it will ask for your locations, then select your location over here and press continue. It will set automatically the Indian Standard Time over here into the system. Then it will ask for the keyboard layout. By default we are using the keyboard layout called English UK. Press select that particular keyboard layout and press enter, or we can say continue. Then give the valid username and password over here through which you can access the resources of Linux. Press continue. After some time the installation get finished and one welcome message is onto the screen which shows that operating system is successfully installed into the system and we need to restart the system. So just restart the system. Once you restart the system, Ubuntu is going to be loaded from the secondary storage device and you will see the output of Ubuntu with its desktop onto the screen. So this was all about how can we install, which we have already done practically into the previous lecture, but in this we have just repeated the installation steps over here. Even we know that how to start and shut down the Linux operating system. So this was all about getting started with Linux, called unit number 8 that we have discussed. In next lecture, we'll go for unit number 9, that is Linux booting. Again, it contains a very short description of a single lecture only, where we will discuss that how Linux operating system internally works, or how the booting process of Linux operating system get executed while you have started the same. So thank you very much, students, for listening me, and have a nice day.